Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of Homescreen. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Ross Logan, who is a co-founder and runs product for a great fintech brand called Snoop. We're going to take a look at a few journeys today. Registration flow, so the way that they get users onto the platform. Following that, we'll take a look at the way that the API gateway provided by OpenWrks to get that transaction data in. And then finally, we're going to take a look at the way that they kind of surface offers to their users. So they're analyzing a lot of information, and they're able to kind of provide bespoke kind of offers from those different companies to help those users to save money. So we're going to take a look at that feature, which is called the Snoop Draw. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and come by next time for more.
So I guess we'll start off by talking a little bit about you and how kind of Snoop came into being.
I mean, I'll start with Snoop, and then because that's more interesting than me. But we started about a year and a half ago, and it's quite interesting. So the co-founding team of Snoop, which isn't tiny to be honest, but where it came about is we're a group of colleagues and friends that worked together previously at Virgin Money. So we were working on a ring-fenced digital bank, kind of greenfield digital bank build at VM, and after the deal of the bank to 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏 and we'd subsequently left, we were really keen to keep pursuing what we'd started. We were like on this mission towards this goal, and we thought we were achieving some pretty cool stuff, and we kind of felt like we had some unfinished business. So, that coupled with the fact that we all really got on and enjoyed working together meant that it was quite an easy decision to kind of just continue on that journey and kind of when we left VM to start something by ourselves, and we started having to think about what that possibly could be based on the stuff we've been working towards and what we'd learned, and Snoop was kind of born out of that.
Interesting. And so obviously you probably can't talk about what you were building during your days at Virgin Money, but were there certain correlations with the kind of product configuration that Snoop currently has?
I think it comes more in the conceptual kind of ethos of what we were trying to do. So what we were really interested in and what we'd spent a lot of time doing is thinking about how kind of finances and life could merge into a single, more unified proposition. And it all sounds quite grandiose, but really we're thinking about like, how do you go beyond traditional banking and just showing information and letting people perform banking services to help, use finances as something to help and transactional information join people with the services that they might be able to use. So if you set a budget, that's amazing, and that's good innovation, and that's really good. But what's really cool, if you set a budget and you're not meeting it, and a service could offer you suggestions and actually put you in contact with things that could help you save money and reduce that budget deficit, so to speak. So we kind of had this obsession and this focus on, we wanted to make people better off, and that was always what we worked towards, kind of that as a mission. And I think making people better off was about putting pounds and pence back in people's pocket by helping them do that, but also, understanding some of the stresses that money and financial life bring, and how we can, build experiences to help address some of those things. So that was really what we spent a lot of time from a conceptual proposition point of view thinking about. And I think that although the mechanism changes slightly when you move out of being a full-blown bank, things like open banking kind of open the door to help us achieve some of those things through a slightly different method. And if anything, I think, being free of some of the commercial and regulatory shackles that being a bank brings with it, kind of rightly so, helps us, has helped us kind of build a more nimble organization to achieve some of those things a bit quicker even.
Sure. Could you give us a little indication as to what it is and what sort of was the core problem at the heart of building?
It's an app to help people live, spend and save smarter by using transactional information to help connect customers to insights, tips, services. I mean, I guess content, you could really describe it all, that helps them save money. And all the team always laugh at me about this, but I kind of see Snoop as a content platform. I think it's like more similar to Netflix than it is to a neobank in a way, because really what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop an understanding of people. It's a proper platform. We're trying to develop an understanding of people and using transactional data as a starting point to do that. And then ultimately connect them with services that that they might want and need. And the first kind of iteration in our focus now is all around, well, helping you save money, helping you, and saving money could be by managing things better or by changing supplier and everything in between. And that's really at a high level what we're looking to do. I think that, the problems we're looking to address, I think are quite interesting as well, because I think you can kind of almost break Snoop down into 3 bits. There's one bit that is make managing my money easier by showing me it all in one place, and it's almost as simple as that. I mean, I think previously, if you wanted to look at your credit card balance and your current account and your Monzo and your Revolut and everything, and put it in a spreadsheet and figure out where you are, you could do it, but it was hard. And I think aggregation is a good service. I think it makes things easier and makes things simpler. I think the other thing we looked at is kind of make sure I'm getting the best deals on the things I buy. So I'm out there spending, but I don't know when I'm there if I could have had an offer on that, or if I could have done 2 for 1, or if I could go to a competitor and I could actually get a better deal on the same thing. So kind of bring that, but don't make me search through all of it. Bring it as in personalized towards myself based on my spending and what I do. And then I think the third bit is for the big subscriptions we've got in life, kind of help me figure out if I'm paying too much for the things I use, and then change supplier. Because if I'm not too bothered about who provides my energy or who provides my broadband to a certain degree, and even if I am, well, just let me know if the people I have right now are right for me, and if not, then suggest some alternatives and try and quantify potentially what I can be saving.
Sure.
We had a really clear mission. We wanted to help people. We wanted to make people better off. We wanted to kind of flip finance in its head and interacting with your money on its head, and make it easier ultimately, but not just go to that view, because we saw a lot of people doing aggregation based propositions, and to be honest, they're amazing. We love all of them, but we thought, well, aggregation is great, but it only solves one piece of the puzzle, which is kind of let me see everything in one place and help me with it. But what we wanted to do was, I guess, develop what I think of Snoop as almost like that content platform, but also that next generation marketplace. It's not a marketplace where you go to a section of an app and you can click on different things and there's no connection to your life and your spending and what you do. It was kind of to dissolve those barriers between services that exist, in the world today. So you can go to price comparison websites and you can type in your information and you can then switch your service, but you can take all your information and put it in Excel, and you can see all your finances in one place. You can go to voucher websites and sign up for them and search for the merchants that you shop at, and get all of the things that Snoop kind of does. But all of those things are predicated on the consumer taking the first step. So it was like, how can we use this proliferation of financial data to help remove friction from those services that are really, really helpful and actually help people tons, because they help take stress out of things, because they help you save money. How can we be a bit smarter and think about it a bit differently by using the experience that we have with transactional data sets, the opportunity that open banking gives us, and remove friction from those kind of industries and those journeys to kind of create an app that does a variety of different things, but is proactive in suggesting to people, as opposed to putting the onus on the customer to going out and searching and taking the first step. So we had quite a clear vision of what we wanted to achieve, and we wanted to do something differentiated. Like you say, there was a lot of activity in this space. Everyone from the incumbent banks to the neobanks and then the aggregator plays were focusing on, well, link all your bank accounts and see all your information in one place. And again, it was that kind of not just wanting to do that read-only view that's amazing and really helpful. We wanted to be able to help people take the next step in the journey to remedy some of the things they might be seeing, and or just optimize what they've got. And it was almost quite easy in a way. That the vision that we had at the start was, really clear, and it was just something that then we fleshed out, we designed, we built some prototypes of, and it was really just a case of chunking that down and building it. We kind of had the courage of our convictions to think what we were doing was differentiated. So we knew speed to market was going to be a huge thing. We wanted to get this out there because we wanted to get it out there to start learning about it and seeing if it was something that people would find useful and if it was something we could achieve. And I think that, based on the way we did it, using partners to do certain key bits, and that's everything from building it and helping us with the development to OpenWrks and the API integrations and everything in between. it was really important just to get it into the hands of consumers as quickly as possible, so then we could kind of test and learn from it. And I think that's the phase we've got to now. At that time.
And that seems wise as well. I mean, as far as there seems to be a general shift towards sort of like speed to market is key. You don't want to spend too much time bootstrapping everything and building it yourselves. So, you know, OpenWrks are fantastic at doing API gateways. Trust them to do that. If you need to do ID and verification, then you use an on-feeder or something like that. And then you kind of then you consolidate and think about it and bring it all in-house later on. Very quickly on this, before we move on, I wanted to kind of ask about, so you operated like a beta program, and it has a test flight product, which I've seen kind of where you go through into test flight, that you provide a series of kind of instructions as to sort of what you kind of, you know, what they can expect and so on.
Yeah.
You, and it's kind of like a waitlist mechanism. I think everyone in product like loves the idea of running and operating a waitlist and being able to sort of like get users and onto the platform gradually and in a sort of safe way. Why approach it this way? What are you trying to learn in particular from different batches of users getting on the platform? And how have you found kind of using that as a mechanism for doing that?
Well, I think that there was definitely product motivations for it, because I think that you want to have a controlled user base that you can engage with regularly. And I think if you turn the tap on too much, it just makes that process more difficult. If the fewer people, the more one-to-one interactions, quite literally, you can have to better understand it. But I think there was definitely drivers from an infrastructure and a technology point of view as well. We were dealing with a bit of an unknown in terms of these APIs and in terms of the volume of data that we're receiving and dealing with. So, you know, as well as the apps being our product, I mean, we have an incredible team that builds the infrastructure, you know, cloud-based infrastructure for this thing. And it was really just an opportunity to turn the taps on slowly to help us understand how the end-to-end flow of the data from OpenWrks and from the banks to OpenWrks even, all the way through into our analytics environments would work, and how we could help refine that process and tune it as we went. So there were definitely massive benefits from a product point of view, because it meant that we could engage with our customers as we let them on the platform and really learn from the experience they were having. But a lot of it was driven also from the technology and infrastructure point of view, and kind of support point of view and operations point of view. Are we ready for this thing to scale up massively? And if we have some gaps, it's better to find it with 100 people than with 1,000 people.
For sure. So without further ado, kind of let's see what the process of registering for a Snoop account actually looks like. The first thing I guess to note is we have this sort of like very nice animated intro screen. You've obviously got some very smart JavaScript developers working with you, and then a series of kind of overviews of three components there: the technology that's used, the skills of the little bot guy, or kind of the app in general, and then the story, the narrative arc of what you want to do, who your team are, and so on and so forth. There's some legal components, a really quick process. Now, we kind of often think a little bit about registration. Maybe this touches on the point you were mentioning before, which is when you're a bank, you have a certain level of regulatory requirement, which just isn't here for this, you know, like it's just not that necessary, which is great in so many ways to get the users through the flow quickly. When you're able to get them through and very quickly introduce them to the product. So that's the kind of general registering flow, and that sort of precedes the account aggregation experience, which will come thereafter. Like, speaking of that sort of like the registration, it is very lightweight, and you will know when you were building product at Virgin Money, however, a typical onboarding flow can range dramatically in terms of how much ID and verification is needed, and all the other sort of regulatory requirements that go alongside that. So how do you think about sort of like the information that you're gathering? What are the requirements from your end, and then what are the demands from the regulators, if you will?
So I think the thing I'd say about that journey is it's really interesting, and I'm so glad we get a chance to talk about it, because we've actually really recently changed it. It wasn't always like that in the app, and only about a month ago we've released version 2 of onboarding, which is pretty exciting. But one of the things that we really wanted to make sure we protected was that really slick, quick process to get through. If you're a confident user and you understand what the product is already and you're just ready to get going, we wanted to make sure that straight through path of kind of 3 bits of data capture, a PIN, and accepting the T's and C's is there. And I think that from a regulatory point of view and things like that, I think the T's and C's is the thing that covers most of that off in this space. And we spent a lot of time making sure that we wrote those in a way that we think is really understandable and clearly communicated to our customers. And again, I think that's something we've learned in the past, that transparency is great. We just trying to help people. We want to achieve that mission. So we have nothing really to hide.
Yeah.
I think name, email address, phone number. I mean, we use the phone number as the kind of unique identifier on the platform side. Everyone has their own one, and that's why we use the OTP to make sure we get that right, and then email is for communications as well. So other than that, we didn't really need a huge amount of personal information to capture to offer the kind of base service of Snoop.
That must feel kind of good in a way, you know, to be able to not take that much information from people.
Yeah, because I think the thing is to fully utilize Snoop, the value exchange between the customer and us, it's significant. When we're asking people to share transactional data with us, but in return, we think that we can, you know, we talk about 1,500 quid is our goal. We can try and offer them significant savings. And I think that because of that, I think we have to be really conscious about making sure that the information that we do collate and capture is stuff that we can use. We don't want to capture data on people that we're not going to use to help ultimately drive outcomes for them and drive personalization and drive hopefully significant savings based on the Snoop feed. So we're really keen to keep the kind of personal data entry to a minimum, because there are other bits of data that help drive the experience and the personalization in Snoop.
And you've placed a lot of emphasis in this particular journey on sort of providing data the other way. So telling them about the company, the mission, the technology, all that kind of thing. Did you, I guess you thought of this more as an educational kind of component to it. What are the drivers behind providing that information up front, and what do you get from it?
So to be honest, feedback was the main driver. Our original flow was a much simpler version of it, where we didn't outline a lot of the product concepts. And I think where we were engaging in our beta and in our invite only and with our early adopters. We generally found it was people that were more comfortable with concepts like open banking, connecting bank accounts, and who we were and what we were trying to achieve. As our customer base has broadened, we've had to provide more information to help explain to people, because these are new concepts we're dealing with. I mean, we got a lot of feedback saying, like, you talk about concepts like connecting a bank account, but how do I do that? Do I input my debit card number? And to be honest, I had no idea, you know, before a year ago about open banking and how it worked. So I don't understand, you know, there's no expectation that others should. And really just looking at providing more information to outline the value exchange more clearly up front. So people can make an informed decision as to if they want to kind of go down this path of sharing information to make the savings. Yeah.
Apart from, I guess, you know, geeks like you and I, no one knows what open banking is. It's not a concept which is really very kind of common, is it? You know, I wouldn't talk to my mum about open banking. I'd talk to my mum about how I can put all of my account information in one place and see everything in one screen and all of that, you know, the messages around that. And so I guess I think it's something that a lot of companies have wrestled with, especially when, you know, when regulation or the names of regulation take place of the functionality that you're trying to describe. It's a little bit, it can feel a little bit like, you know, lazy in a way, but it's the, you know, one of the things that, you know, I guess you appreciate from scaling up is that you're not very often going to get open banking adderists as your users beyond the first 100.
Exactly. It's people who are interested in saving money, and they're the people that we want to help, and they're our target customers. And I think that, yeah, when you're working with emerging technology and you're working with emerging concepts and emerging regulation and stuff like that, you can't have an expectation that anyone, like you say, other than people geeks like us will have a base knowledge of it. And I think it's important that you, again, around that transparency idea, you give as much information up front so people can make informed decisions about whether it's for them and whether they want to proceed or whether they don't.
Yeah. Sorry, I've just realised that was quite an offensive thing to say. Sorry. But
No.
the little, I wanted to chat, like, so this Snoop is a bot as well as a kind of an app in this instance. I would imagine, like, so you have this a fantastic little character who's animated and sort of providing entertainment along the way, but also providing context and also gathering information for you as well. Talk a little bit about sort of the notion of using this as a way to launch your experience with the products.
Yeah, I think it makes it much more personal, and I think that Snoop, when you describe it, we want to be a consumer champion. We want to be on people's side. We want to be this digital assistant, all these kind of things. And they sound a bit like almost naff when you say them, but I think when you create a character that can embody all of those things, it makes it much easier to relate to what you're doing. And I think that's the whole idea. That little robot is the guy that sits in your pocket, and he's kind of waiting, and he's always on your side, always working to try and find you opportunities to save money and try and find you ways that can help you optimize what you've got. And that's really the purpose behind the Snoop character. And I think I think he's great as a would. He's cute, he's funny, he's got a personality, and I think that really
to see some sort of like little desk icon, if you can get one of those little bobblehead things that if there's any, if your marketing team are looking for any merch ideas, that would be my number one suggestion.
I tell you, there's one of the team, Chris, I'm going to embarrass him. So he was doing a working from home kind of lockdown arts and crafts session with some of his kids, and they built almost like a big bobblehead Snoop out of paper mache. So we need to get that onto the social media so people can see it, like big head.
Fantastic. I mean, more media appearances with that, please. That's all I can say. Journey number 2. So registering the account, priority is speed. And then there is an optional area here, which is to connect. In this instance, it's a NatWest account. And then we're going through NatWest's API gateway and into the app, verifying with the Face ID. And then we can sort of request, I guess this is AIS access to transaction data, which can then be redirected. And then we get to see here OpenWrks' URL. It shows us that you're using them to kind of push through, as you've mentioned before. And from there, we then have a connected account. We've got data to play with, and Snoop can sort of work his little magic, or her little magic, I'm not quite sure what gender Snoop is, but so that's the connecting flow. So the first thing to say is registration onboarding. They seems like your kind of account connection flow, and we'll see an example of this later on, is something which doesn't have to happen immediately. It can happen later on in the experience should you've got the flexibility to be able to integrate that sort of later on. But so this is an OpenWrks product. They are providing the sort of access to the banking API. So presumably these are all like the kind of like the big 9 banks, or I guess you can get every bank available via that, can you?
Yeah, we're always adding banks. So we've got pretty good coverage, and we're always looking to add more as they become available. I think one of the things we've certainly learned is open banking. I think at the start, conceptually, it's almost like a one-size-fits-all thing. Everyone plugs into it, and all of a sudden, you've got the whole world's banks then and data accessible. And I think that as we've seen it mature and evolve and be implemented, that's not quite the case. So I'm probably not the perfect person in Snoop to talk to about this. The guy 𝗥ощ he's the open banking wizard. But yeah, there is complexity with connecting with each of the banks, and we see different behavior from different ones, and working through that is something that I guess we didn't fully foresee, but we learned about very quickly, and we're working on.
How do OpenWrks fit into that equation then within the product? We've seen the sort of like there is like an interstitial page which they'll provide you with, and then you can I would imagine that we've seen it before where they provided kind of I guess like the software development kits or like the views. with where you can select the account that you want to connect and that kind of thing. I guess they have a lot of customizability in their product, which you can sort of pick and choose what you want from them. They're a great team, from what we know. We've had them on the show before, showing off their kind of range of SDKs. If anyone wants to know what Snoop are using in this particular instance. But they have this incredible sort of ability to kind of fit nicely and neatly within the product that they're being sort of put into. So how did that work from that perspective? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, they've been amazing because obviously our app is our product and is our experience, is our business. And what we wanted to make sure, you said, you know, speed is the most important thing. And I would only add speed and security are the two things that we were really looking for. And that's what they've been able to deliver. You can see there that, you know, in a number of clicks using things like app to app, a redirection, we can open the connection and we can start that importing process and that refreshing process. So I think that the best thing from my point of view about working with OpenWrks, who've been amazing, is around that they've always looked to make sure that the experience that we're trying to protect is something that's very high up on their priority list. They've obviously got 1,000,001 really complicated techie things to do, but they're always willing to make sure that what they offer us and what they design for us and what they build for us fits in with the flows and the objectives we're trying to achieve for our customers. And when you got partners that ultimately, you know, understand that and buy into that, I think then you're always going to have a good relationship, and it's always going to work. And we're absolutely delighted with it, because I think that like you saw in the video there, a process that's unknown to people is actually really simple. And I think that's actually, we get a lot of feedback on how refreshing that is. You think when you embark on this journey, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Are you going to put your debit card details in? Are you going to have to remember your online logins and all of these things? And actually the journey of connecting accounts, I think, is, you know, a big win for open banking as a whole, because it's actually a pretty simple thing to do.
And AIS access is the first variant of the open banking regulations. There are PIS, or payment initiation services, currently, I guess, being rolled out, and then other sort of variations of that, like direct debit, variable rate, stuff like that. AIS is the current modus operandi for Snoop, and you found yourselves using that information and plugging it in, and we'll see the reason why later on. Do you kind of envisage yourself maybe using a few different parts of the open banking sort of regulation in the future? Is this very much V1, or what's the kind of scope going forward for that?
Yeah, I think so. I think transactions and balances and AIS is a great place to start. And I think it's ultimately, if we can, you know, if we think we can develop experiences that help make people better off and help our customers save money and do it. And I think you don't have to be too creative to figure out what some of those can be. We'd definitely love to try and layer some of that on. It's all just a case of priority. We've got a lot of things I think we can do with what we've got that will make our proposition, you know, infinitely better. I think it's an amazing start, but there's a lot of stuff that we can still work on. And
it's really important, I think, to stay narrow, isn't it? Like, especially this early on, that you can get so carried away with like 1,000,001 ideas. I know we've had this problem before on the product that I've been working on, where you're like, there are so many great things that we could do right now, and then you're like, no, okay, what are the priorities for the business right now? What do we want to do? How does that fit within the current product roadmap, and so on and so forth. So there's an interesting dynamic there.
Because I think, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's, the interesting thing is when you get the raw data, that's only step one. And I think that you know, the genius that exists in Snoop is taking that information, cleansing it and categorizing it and analyzing it and spotting trends in it and stuff like that. So I think that the amazing thing that open banking and OpenWrks and AIS gives us is access to that information. The bit that we can always improve is what we do with that data and how we can make it smarter, because it unfortunately it doesn't come straight out of the bank super squeaky clean and super smart. We have to do a lot of cleansing and a lot of manipulation of the data to be able to identify trends and to be able to use it to fuel the personalization in the experience. Even mapping merchants from different banks, they might appear differently, but ultimately if we want to tell you how much we think you've spent at Boots or somewhere, we need to be able to make sure we can identify all your Boots transactions across the different banks that you use. So it's basic things like that that we can always be working on, and we can always look to improve it and enhance. So yeah, plenty to do with the data we've got thus far.
I guess the message there is Snoop are hiring back-end developers all the time.
Send UVs, get them in.
So how do you think about sort of like, you know, we've mentioned there OpenWrks and so on, and I think we touched on this before. How do you kind of envisage it progressing for you guys, like from a sort of building perspective? Do you think you'll continue to use third parties? A lot of people, and this has been a shift for a lot of, I think the providers of these services as well. You look at sort of, I guess, Galileo and all of those like card issuance services pivoting towards like the first 5,000 card issues, because the realization is that, you know, there is an expectation for an organization to bring that stuff in-house eventually, to take control of their own stuff. That the services offered by OpenWrks can be really competitive for getting you to market super quickly, and that it's one part of the life cycle of the product. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we said before, I think any digital business, I think partnerships are critical, because I think that what partnerships allow you to do is focus on your mission and your objective, and not try and boil the ocean and solve every problem that exists out there. So I think ultimately we're a platform business, and partnerships are always going to be something that's core to our DNA. I mean, we want to be the people that make the savings for our customers and help them. We don't have to build all of the products in order to do that. We just have to have the mechanism to put them in touch with those services. I mean, ultimately, that's the essence of Snoop, being able to use any information, and right now financial information, to spot ways that you can save money. And I think we'd be mad, like you said before, we've got so much to do to make that a great experience, and to make the most of that if we started kind of losing focus on some of that objective, we might drop the ball a little bit on that. And I think, you know, that it's fun as well working with partners. That's the other thing. I mean, you get to meet cool people, and you get better ideas than I certainly could come up with. So I think that overall it helps for a better outcome. So I think that as we understand more the lifeblood, and as we understand Snoop more, as we roll more features out and understand stuff, I think there's always a thing about, you know, what do you want to be your IP, and what do you want to have as your differentiator. But I certainly think that at the start and for the foreseeable future, partnerships are the way to kind of achieve that and keep us focused on our mission.
Sure. So 𝗥𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏 has got your friendship for at least the foreseeable future.
Exactly.
He'll be delighted, I'm sure. So the final iteration, or so the final version of the flow that we're going to see now is sort of an interesting one. It's like it's two views. We're going to play them one after the other, and then from there talk a little bit about the experience, and what kind of, I guess, the meat and veg of the experience, which is the personalization engine and the kind of the ability to see things that are tailored to you. We'll start with unpersonalized. So we can see at the top there a great bright call to action saying let's get it in, get that data in, and let's go personalizing. We do have a range of options there, sort of split into pinned and latest and so on. I guess you're doing kind of the sort of providing the experience of just showing what you can to the user at this point, and without masses of information about them.
Yeah, this is the kind of one thing I was going to say is we didn't want linking an account to be a barrier to entry to Snoop. We wanted to let people understand the experience before they made a decision if they wanted to link or not. And what this is looking at, it's looking at Snoops and letting you understand and play with the experience before linking an account, and therefore getting this experience personalized. So these are generic Snoops. We serve the top ones based on the interaction we get with our linked Snoops and the feedback we get from our linked users. And it's really kind of a try before you buy type model. It's understand how it works, and understand what the Snoop drawer is, and understand even what a Snoop is to again allow people to make a more informed decision. And then when you flip on to this next video, it's kind of looking at the evolution of that Snoop drawer and these Snoops to becoming smarter and more personalized based on your spending and what you're doing.
So 4 linked accounts here. regular payments and so on, we can see a load of information available.
Yeah.
Really nice to see like all those different logos in place. And the kind of the latest again, pinned and browsing.
And you can see here that just even the headlines of the Snoops have changed. So all of a sudden you see the Sky one, 1427 in the past 17 months. I mean, 260 at Tesco, and even the order in which they're appearing. This is based on looking through the transactions on these linked accounts and the spending patterns to understand. Also different types of Snoops when you have linked accounts. So it's not all about just merchant spending. That's looking at your last 7 days. So giving you a summary. Here's one kind of quantifying the benefit for maybe switching an energy supplier. Again, stuff that's hyper personalized based on Sky. I love Sky, as you can see.
I just think the design language of the whole experience is really lovely as well. It's so it's not overbearing in any way. It's sort of like very a nice mixture of different sort of design language and different sort of brand images and that kind of thing. Like nothing sort of seems to overwhelm, which is really great. And you spent X amount at Amazon, which is always a very troubling realization how much you've spent at Amazon,
especially in lockdown.
And so we've seen that the kind of what's nice about that from my perspective is that the experience on the whole doesn't dramatically change. You're not shifting context so dramatically in the sense of like, you know, you have a new set of headers or anything. It's just those little nuanced sort of like sections where you have a value put in saying this is how much you've spent on this thing, this is how much you could spend on another thing, which is cute. It's really it's a much kind of more sophisticated way of doing it, I think. How did you kind of how did you decide kind of what were important to surface on the unpersonalized side of the things? Now you've mentioned there the sort of like the teaser or the latest and that kind of thing. Was there any kind of like messing around with that format to see if anything else might work? How did you settle on that as an option?
Well, I guess, I mean, we want to showcase Snoop to the unlinked user because we're still trying to kind of outline the benefits of what we can offer. So we want to make sure that we put a range of Snoops on there. And then really what we want to do is put the best ones at the top, the ones that people find most valuable. Because if the majority of linked customers who are getting them find them valuable, there's more chance, I guess, someone we could, they'd be valuable to someone that we don't really have any information to tailor them on.
Yeah.
And I think in the unlinked state as well, you've got that browse button that lets you search through the different categories. So you can do a bit of searching to try and find it. It was more just about figuring out which ones are the most useful to the linked customers and which ones showcase Snoop the best. Yeah,
for sure. And how does that sort of like, so the elephant in the room here is that there are an awful lot of different sort of organizations there. And as someone who's tried to kind of navigate that space myself in terms of commercial agreements and so on, it can be tough. What is it? How do you work with these sort of like? How do you think about sort of what information to include in there? What brands to include? Is there an agreement of any sort? How does that generally work for you?
With a normal Snoop, no, we're just servicing information that exists in the public domain anyway. So if Tesco Club Card is something that helps Tesco customers, then we think it's just a way of sending that information to them, and there's no real relationship there. Okay. When we start getting into the kind of switching journeys and suggesting the changing of services, they are partners that we have that exists out there, and I think we're very transparent. That is the main way that we as a business make money, and by receiving a commission if people switch services. But I think we're really lucky, and more that by design than luck is the way we can save customers most money is by helping them switch services at this point. And so it actually ties in really nicely. It's not that we're trying to push these things to generate ourselves. We're pushing these things because we think they can actually generate the most savings and help you get to that 1,500 quid a year number or whatever it is in your context. So we don't work with the individual suppliers. We work with some kind of switching services in different sectors like broadband and mobile phone and energy to achieve that.
Yeah. And do you and in terms of like surfacing that information in the app, I presume that someone's you'll be sort of like I would be assuming here, but presumably there's someone working full time on that experience of being able to maybe see what partner offers there are out there, or is that how it works?
Yeah, content production's a big part of our business, but what our ambition is to make this more of a self-sustaining platform. So we really encourage, and we get a lot of customers that submit Snoops themselves, because in order to get the really good deals, the ones that not everyone knows about, they're often really localized, or they're quite nuanced. And there's nothing better than, like, if you've got a really good thing and you tell your pals in the pub about it, that, by the way, if you do this, and then the next week they come back and two of them say, oh, I actually did that, and that saved me some money, or that helped me, or that was better. And we want to kind of create that community feel around it, that right now to get it going and to maintain it. And we love finding the content and publishing it, but lots of customers do submit Snoops, and we want more to, and we want to encourage them to, because they'll help the platform grow and become stronger.
Yeah, there's something really nice about that sort of like that segue, the sort of the junction between sort of the online experience of the app, and then also like the word of mouth experience of like, oh, this is a thing I've tried and I've enjoyed doing it, and that sort of thing. I found that particularly around the I don't know if you've ever used anything like Match Pint, which is like a I'm probably showing that I like a pint from time to time, but it's essentially like this sort of like, you can predict football scores and rugby scores and that kind of thing, and then it gives you a kind of you can win like free stuff if you do it, and then you're in the pub with someone and they're able to claim a free pint, and then you're like, how did you do that? It's a really powerful mechanism for really talking to people about your product.
Yeah,
I can imagine that kind of like that, not only like that expulsion of information towards the customer, but the other way back in can have its benefits.
Yeah, people ultimately like saving money. It makes us feel good. It feels like we're getting one back for the little guy, almost. Like, you're finding these big businesses and these big corporations, and I think that's a really powerful thing. It's kind of people helping people, and if we can, I think the important thing is if we can surface the relevant ones to you, so you don't have to go wading through a sea of information as you kind of do right now. That's the value we can ultimately add to the equation.
Sure, yeah. Okay, just to finish off, I wanted to kind of I think we briefly touched on the sort of like the rollout via test flight and how it allowed you to control the sort of the flow and the kind of the learnings and that kind of thing. If you were to do that kind of process again, would you have any kind of anything else you'd do differently?
Probably the biggest learning we had from the launch process is, and I think I could safely speak on behalf of the team, that we underestimated how different it was going to be just being in build mode and then having a live product to support as well. And I think test flight really helped us because it let us dip our toe in. But when we moved out and we moved to kind of full public and full launch, I think we underestimated the kind of the response we got from customers, the volumes we got from customers, the engagement we got from customers. And all of a sudden your focus can't just be on your 2-week sprints and building the next feature and designing the next thing. You've got this whole world to manage and run, and that comes across every aspect of the business. So I think if we did it again, I would definitely use the test flight model, because I think it really helped us kind of prepare a little bit for that, but I think that I'd maybe even run it for a little bit longer to help us really get up to speed from, I guess, a business operations point of view, for not just building it, being able to build it and run it at the same time. Yeah.
I completely agree. I was very lucky, I guess, to be able to launch a greenfield proposition within 𝗤𝗏FS, and very, very green at the time myself, not my proposition, but I kind of had that experience of having a market of users that I wanted to kind of build for, and then also kind of and then was focused on building for a few months. And then when it got out, I kind of realized afterwards that I didn't have an operating model, like, at all. It was just weeks and weeks and weeks of just like, okay, so how does this work from an operating perspective? And then whilst that's going on, users can drop off, and it sort of feels like you're sort of like paddling or kind of like struggling to stay afloat in a sea of constantly kind of changing situations and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's similar to what you were saying there. I think you were probably a lot more prepared than I was.
Well, mate, we'll have to meet again and talk about, share war stories, because I don't know.
Well, And then finally, 2020, obviously it's been an interruption over the past few sort of months. What's the kind of, are you still plugging on with the plans as usual, or has anything shifted for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're unique because we were born in this. I mean, we launched in lockdown, and it's all we've really ever known. So it's something that I guess is familiar to us in that way, and we didn't have to adapt to it because we started in it. So I think we'll continue going on. I think we've reached a really kind of interesting point in our maturity where now I think, as opposed to just adding new features and new skills and experiences, which we want to do, we also want to look at, like we've done with onboarding and like we're doing with our demo mode experience right now, is look at how we can optimize some of those to make them more useful and make them better. Speed to market was massive for us. We achieved those objectives and we're really proud of that. But that meant that we put version 1 of a lot of things out there. And now what we want to do is we spend a lot of time, looking at data and analyzing interactions and talking to our customers. And we want to see that maybe it's not a case of frantically adding more and more and more. Maybe it's a case of making what we've got a little bit stronger and more helpful ultimately. But saying that, I think we want to add more partners to the platform. We want to get more services that can help people save money, switch different services and do things like that. It's something we want to do. We mentioned payments. It's really interesting. And I think there's some pretty cool use cases we can look at. And I think the kind of possibility is endless. I think on-demand refresh, all sorts of cool stuff that just makes the experience more useful and better. And I think we have a pretty good understanding of how people are using the app right now and the bits that they're finding most useful. And it's really about making those bits better and going from there.
Perfect. And I guess just on a final note then, if there is anyone out there who's kind of looking to sort of see if they can help you guys out, maybe if they're thinking about partnering with you or something, what's the best way to do that?
Got an email, partnerships@snoop.app, which is the best place to go, or just connect with any of us on LinkedIn or whatever. Send us a WhatsApp, find our numbers and go for it. We're always keen to chat to everyone and we're really interested.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ross. Really appreciate you taking the time.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
If you want to hear a little bit more about Pulse, the platform that underlies this show, then head over to pulse.11fs.com. That's essentially a repository of all the different digital banking experiences we've been gathering over the years. It'll show you how stuff's being built, what all the cool things are out there, and what your competitors are doing.